Next on the news.
It was just an amorphous dream fueled by, very candidly, the fear of losing my child.
A mother's love knows no bounds. What one mom is doing to help her son who has a rare genetic disorder. Also tonight,
I think there are a number of really critical details that we've still got to work out before making a final decision on a vote.
call it cautious optimism. Both sides of the aisle continue to iron out a debt ceiling deal, but we're a long way to the finish line. A surprise turn. The FBI is looking into an Easter Sunday church fire, and now an arson investigation is underway. Plus, congratulating the happy couple. The Pope takes a moment to celebrate 50 years of joy and happiness between a husband and wife. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now.
On earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those.
Anthony Filipazzo's words have power. They are representing hope for a community of people. Anthony has a rare genetic disorder, and his mother, Camille, has been fighting for him since the moment he was born. The way he lives today is a product of her love and sacrifice, not only for her son, but generations to come. Currents News' Jessica Easthope joins us now with more on this. Hi, Jess.
Hi, Christine. Anthony's Williams syndrome affects his entire body. His mom, Camille, has dedicated herself to raising money for research, the kind that, without her foundation, would never have been conducted. Now she and her family are letting their faith carve out a path they're hoping leads to a medical breakthrough.
Let's make a snack, buddy. Oh, what do we have here to eat? Want to have your favorite? Of course. Strawberries.
Camille Fortunato says her 11-year-old son Anthony is one in a million.
Anything? Anything I want else?
They're the best of friends, dance partners,
God is watching over you.
reading buddies,
Your turn.
and the perfect duet. But in reality, Anthony is more like 1 in 20,000.
I am Anthony from Brooklyn. I like to swim, dance, and sing and play the drums. Yeah.
That's how many Americans are living with the rare genetic disorder Williams syndrome.
All day I win my school.
Anthony's diagnosis comes with chromosomal abnormalities and causes physical and developmental disabilities. Among other serious symptoms, Anthony's blood vessels are narrow and rigid. It can cause him to very suddenly go into cardiac arrest.
That's always something that's in my mind. I go to bed with it at night and I wake up with it every morning. There's not a second of the day that I say, it could be today. The moon and the stars are nothing without
But over the
you.
years, Camille hasn't missed a beat. She's given Anthony every opportunity to thrive.
Speech and physical therapy, occupational therapy, swim therapy, feeding therapy, horseback riding, music therapy. The evolution has really been remarkable.
Since undergoing cardiovascular surgery this past January, Anthony takes no medication.
When they fix my heart, I feel happy.
But that's actually the opposite of what Camille hopes for him. Developing a therapeutic drug is the goal of the Anthony Filipazzo Grant for Williams Syndrome Research, a foundation Camille and her husband Stefano started in 2018.
When I started shifting my efforts into Williams syndrome research, it was a dream fueled by, very candidly, the fear of losing my child.
Camille, a lifelong parishioner of St. Bernard's Parish in Bergen Beach, says her faith is what keeps her motivated. But that wasn't always the case.
Oftentimes I would say, you could have done anything to me, right? Why you have to hurt him? Well, maybe this was God's bigger plan.
Camille is now passing her faith on. Office manager Sandra Arcadi says Anthony is a big part of their church community.
People in the church should say their prayers the way that Anthony does when he answers Father Mike and Monsignor Grimaldi. You always hear him singing, always hear him saying amen, just really full of life.
Anthony becomes more independent every day, and Camille dedicates her time to raising awareness, hoping the future is certain and bright, not just for her son, but for every child who is diagnosed with Williams syndrome.
I hope that 20 years from now, children who have died already from Williams syndrome complications won't be dying any longer, that my son will be living a productive and fulfilling life, and I hope I'm still here to see it all. Here we go. Who's going to start?
Camille says with the research that's being funded by her foundation, she no longer feels like the future is out of her hands.
Camille's goal is a big one. She's hoping to raise $1 million this year for Williams syndrome research. And Christine, she actually just got closer to that. They had an event on Monday, and Camille told me they raised $400,000.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, Jess, in watching Anthony and how advanced and how happy he is, you'd never guess that he struggles with so much.
Yeah, Camille was able to tell me a little bit more about what it was like in the early years of Anthony's diagnosis. He was nonverbal till he was 5. They would have to restart his heart at home. She said she had to do it hundreds of times when he was younger. He had little to no motor skills, and to see him now, I mean, he plays multiple instruments. What more can you say?
Wow, that is wonderful. What a great story. Thanks so much, Jess.
Thank you.
To donate to the Filipazzo's Organization for Williams Syndrome Research, you can visit wsresearch.org. Now to a developing story as investigators try to figure out why a parking garage collapsed in Lower Manhattan. A controlled demolition of the century-old building is now planned. The 4-story garage has had a number of code violations over the last few decades, but no word if those issues contributed to the collapse. One person was killed, 7 others hurt when the top floor collapsed inwards towards the lower level on Tuesday. The collapse had people at Pace University scrambling. The college is next to the garage, and students were told to evacuate when it happened. They've since been allowed to return to their residence halls. Some classes are being held remotely to try to ease the traffic in Lower Manhattan. Over in Alabama, 2 teenage brothers are behind bars after a Sweet 16 shooting rampage. 4 people were killed, dozens more wounded. Cole Higgins has more.
Police have arrested 2 teenagers in connection with a mass shooting at a Sweet 16 party in Dadeville, Alabama last weekend.
Officially arrested and charged Tyreek McCullough, 17 of Tuskegee, and Travis McCullough, 16, also of Tuskegee, with 4 counts of reckless murder each.
The suspects were arrested Tuesday evening, several long days after 4 people were killed and 32 others injured at the celebration, including 15 teens who suffered gunshot wounds. Among those killed was the birthday girl's older brother, who was a gifted college-bound athlete. District Attorney Mike Segrist says the 4 murder charges are just the tip of the iceberg, and more charges are pending.
Even though these are 16 and 17-year-olds, we will be charging them as adults in this.
A motive has not been released, and law enforcement is still asking people who know anything to come forward.
Somebody's got to start thinking about Mama. We're tired of going to the mothers and having to tell them that these kids are not coming home.
Cole Higgins, Current News.
The man charged with shooting a black teen who rang his doorbell pleads not guilty. 84-year-old Andrew Lester was arraigned on Wednesday. According to a probable cause document, he admitted shooting Ralph Yarl last week, saying he thought the 16-year-old was trying to break in. Yarl, who went to the wrong house to pick up his younger siblings, is expected to make a full recovery after suffering a traumatic brain injury. Meanwhile, we're getting more information on that deadly wrong driveway shooting in upstate New York. People who know the homeowner accused of opening fire on a car that pulled into his driveway say Kevin Monahan has a reputation for being angry, had a problem with a local church, and disliked unannounced visitors. A group of friends were in a car that turned into his driveway by mistake on Saturday. One of the passengers, 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis, was killed when Monahan allegedly fired at the car. He claims he was scared after seeing multiple cars speeding up his driveway. The Supreme Court's ruling in a huge abortion pill case is now not expected until at least Friday. The justices are deciding whether to let lower court rulings stand that would restrict access to mifepristone, a drug used to terminate pregnancies. On Wednesday, Justice Samuel Alito issued an order that allowing the pill to remain on the market without restrictions until at least Friday. They were originally set to expire at midnight. The Supreme Court's decision will not only determine the access abortion seekers will have to the medication, investigation, but it also raises questions about what kind of authority the FDA has to determine a drug's safety and appropriate rules for use. Now to the debt ceiling debacle in Washington, D.C. There seems to be tension between the White House and House Republicans, and the deadline to make a deal is looming. John Lawrence reports.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy focused on trimming the bottom line.
We're very concerned about what the president and the Democrats have done by spending so much money creating inflation for the last 24 months.
McCarthy says he has enough support to get the GOP's debt limit bill passed along party lines. The proposal, which hasn't been released or finalized, includes getting back unspent COVID-19 funds, 10-year caps on spending, prohibiting President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness, and enacting a GOP energy bill.
I think there are a number of really critical details that we've still got to work out before making a final decision on a vote, but it's been a very productive discussion and a lot of good ideas.
The Biden White House isn't impressed with the House Republicans' goals.
They're even talking about adding $3 trillion to our debt in wasteful tax giveaways to the richest Americans and big corporations.
The president spoke with Democratic leaders Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries Tuesday to discuss the Republican plan, which Biden blasted, saying in a statement the GOP should, quote, pass a clean bill like they did 3 times in the previous administration.
One thing that we know that is clear is that this President Biden's budget shows his priority is delivering for hardworking Americans.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
There's a lot more news headed your way. The FBI stepping in on an investigation into an Easter church fire, why they believe it may have been intentionally set. Well wishes from the Pope to a couple celebrating 50 years of marriage. See the memorable and touching moment. Plus, dozens of schools across New York will soon be cheering for different teams at sporting events. The massive change made for mascots across the state.
Holy Week in the Diocese of Brooklyn. Currents News was there to cover it all. From the Palm Sunday procession.
About 100 Catholics took to the streets of Brooklyn.
To the Chrism Mass.
Currents News' Jessica Easthope is in the thick of it all.
There are some priests here celebrating their 65th anniversary of ordination.
The conclusion of the first Lenten pilgrimage.
Bishop Brennan joined pilgrims for a majority of the journey.
Holy Thursday and the Way of the Cross on Good Friday.
The Way of the Cross is making its way over the Brooklyn Bridge.
Plus, powerful testimonies from new Catholics.
I'm blessed to be able to wake up every morning.
And a message of hope from Bishop Brennan.
Christ is alive.
Currents News is there. Happy Easter.
A promise to rebuild, but first, questions need to be answered. A Lutheran church community in Massachusetts wants to move forward after a devastating Easter Sunday fire. But now the FBI is opening an investigation to see if that fire was intentionally set. Caroline Goggin reports.
An arson investigation underway after a fire tears through this Cambridge church on Easter Sunday.
All this smoke coming up, all this fire coming up with a kind of the clouds, that it just seemed unreal.
9 days later, the FBI is sharing this poster, seeking information about the fire that they now believe is suspicious. The pastor at Faith Lutheran just learning the news tonight.
It's concerning, it's shocking, but it's also news to me. Certainly not what I expected or what anybody would expect or think.
Flames consumed this building not long after Easter services. At one point, 150 firefighters from about a dozen departments were on scene as neighbors stood by watching them battle the blaze.
They were going to grab another can of air to go back in, breaking out windows to try to get water in. It was surreal.
While several firefighters suffered minor injuries, no one else was hurt. But the church was heavily damaged, the steeple eventually taken down.
It's too soon yet to know what we're going to do with our property and what sort of projects or building projects are in the future for us.
Now investigators are looking for the public's help, asking anyone with information about this fire to reach out. The Cambridge fire chief saying in a statement, "No piece of information is too small to share. We are keenly aware that any place of worship is a cornerstone of the community, and we want to reassure residents that we're approaching this case with the seriousness and gravity that it deserves."
That was Caroline Goggin reporting. Fortunately, no one was hurt in the fire, but it did take 150 firefighters from multiple townships to help put it out. Out in California, a 27-year-old man has been arrested for allegedly vandalizing a church in Newport Beach. According to police, early Saturday morning, the suspect, identified as Nicholas Briones, broke several windows at the United Methodist Christ Church by the Seas before he was spotted by officers near the Catholic Church across the street. Police say Briones immediately admitted to breaking the windows. He has no known association with the church. Senior pastor there, Reverend Paul Capitz, says despite the destruction of the decades-old windows, his congregation came together to help.
The fact that people came here as soon as they heard about it on Saturday morning to clean up so that we could worship again on Sunday morning is a sign of resilience and hope that we're not going to be daunted by this. And I talked with an officer there who was on the scene, and he told me that the suspect, who was later apprehended and confessed to the crime, took a baseball bat and smashed all these beautiful windows.
Why?
I have no idea. No one seems to know.
The suspect was booked on felony vandalism and a probation violation. He is being held in jail without bail. The longest-serving television preacher has passed away. Dr. Charles Stanley was the founder of In Touch Ministries and served as senior pastor of First Baptist in Atlanta for nearly 50 years. He was also widely known for his weekly television show, which aired for more than 40 years and was broadcast to millions of viewers around the world. Members of his congregation say they'll never forget his Sunday greeting.
His wonderful smile and his big embrace. You know, when you saw him in the hallway, he knew you by name, and he was always there to greet you and to love on you like a true pastor. So not only a teacher, but a true pastor's heart.
Dr. Stanley is survived by his son, who is also a pastor, and a daughter. His memorial service will be private, but there will be a public viewing at the Atlanta church next Saturday. The Tablet newspaper is honoring a Brooklyn priest who recently passed. He was a hero during 9/11. During that time, Monsignor Martin Garrity was the pastor of St. Francis de Sales Parish in Belle Harbor. And on top of leading a grieving community through the shock that was the terror attacks, he also helped to bury the fallen. The darkness only intensified when in November of that year, a plane crashed into Belle Harbor. Monsignor Garrity rushed over to bless the bodies. You can read more about him in this week's paper. The paper is also diving into the personal side of a possible saint and the first African-American priest, Father Augustus Tolton. The Tablet talks to a relative of Tolton who grew up hearing about the man, not the legend. Now you can learn all about him from this week's paper. So be sure to grab a copy at your local church. You can also get future papers sent straight to your mailbox by subscribing online at thetablet.org. In Rome, a married Mexican couple scored gold for their wedding anniversary after Pope Francis blessed their long-lasting union. Currents News' Kelsey Gussie finds out more about their holy experience.
Pope Francis stopped to talk to a married couple for more than a minute during one of his general audiences. Maria Esther Solis Rosas and Tomas Orozco Cano came from Mexico to see the Pope and ask for a blessing on their 50th wedding anniversary. They were touched by the Pope's response to their request.
It was very, very exciting because it was something we never thought would happen to us, let alone that he would speak to us and give us his blessing. Because we were celebrating 50 years of marriage, he asked how many children I had, and I told him 4. Then I told him our son was here with us. He said it is a great inspiration for everyone that we have been married for 50 years. He also said he will be expecting us back here in 10 years.
Maria Esther and Tomas believe their experience in Rome was memorable and touching, but their encounter with the Pope was also filled with laughter. The couple were married in 1973. Now they returned to Mexico with an unforgettable experience and a special papal blessing.
Congrats to them. That was Kelsey Gussie reporting. Pope Francis has always been an advocate for love. In 2014, he married 20 couples at the Vatican. Still to come on Currents News, a big change coming for some school mascots that are deemed inappropriate. And one homeowner finds out the hard way she has a bear problem. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. A Canadian woman made a grisly discovery when she caught a soda thief red-handed. After hearing her dog barking in the middle of the night, she found a black bear guzzling cans of soda that she left in her car. The bear smashed through the car window and bit right into the cans to open them up.
He started with the Orange Crush, and eventually the last thing he got was the Diet Pop. So out of the 72 pop, he drank 69 of them. And you could hear him slurping it the whole time. And he didn't break them open with his claws as you would think he would. He used his teeth every time.
He really liked that Orange Crush. Sharon Roselle owns a food truck, and all of that soda was for her business. An overhaul is taking place in some schools in the state of New York. Native American mascots are being banned after a recent vote. But as Kristen Miranda explains, the move is coming at a high cost.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The Board of Regents unanimously approved the state education department's requirement that districts across New York can no longer use Native American names, mascots, imagery, or logos.
We're committed to following those regulations, those changes.
Tonawanda City Schools Superintendent Dr. Timothy Oldenburg is now preparing for his district to change its logo. Oldenburg says this change will be costly with no support from the state.
And we're a district that's going to comply, and we're going to do very good work working with our stakeholders, our community, and again, most importantly, the students, in determining what our next steps are.
If changes aren't made by the end of the 2024-2025 school year, it could be ineligible for state aid.
We will have to, because of New York State, change our chief and our Native American male figurehead that we've been using since the inception of the district.
Iroquois Central School District Superintendent Douglas Schofield says the school's mascot, when it was created, was done out of a sign of respect.
Because it's been respectful, and we want to be respectful, if this is the direction for respect to change, we should honor that and move forward with it. And then we're going to move forward with a bright new future, and that will be inclusive of everybody.
And these changes are what John Kane, a Native activist, says is long overdue.
I hope the student bodies of these schools are educated as to why this was necessary.
He says the logos and mascots are cultural appropriation.
And we're saying we're just taking our identity back. We're reclaiming it because what you've done was misappropriated it.
That was Kristen Moran reporting. New York is following 20 other states which have moved to change their indigenous-related mascots at the high school level. A group of Alabama students are now a viral sensation after singing the national anthem in Washington. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's Wow. 7 members of the Hewitt-Trussville High School Choir gave an impromptu performance Saturday when they arrived at the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. Their vocal cords were already warmed up because earlier in the day, the choir sang in the National Cherry Blossom Festival Parade. So talented. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.